You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions Special Episode 41.
The Tricorder Transmissions 300th episode celebration. Hey guys, this is the original mission section of our 300th Tricorder Transmissions episode, and I'm Jeff Hewlett, and joining me is the other founding member of the Tricorder Transmissions from way back in the day, Mr. Craig Cohen.
Yeah, hey Jeff, this is actually pretty crazy, looking at episode 300.
I know, I'm just amazed looking back. I mean, throwing the Wayback Machine on, man, we met in I think 2004 or 5?
Right, I think it was 2004 because we both started that job together within months of each other. So yeah, I want to say 2004.
Yeah, because I think we wound up on some sort of a team together at work, and that's how we met. And of course, both of us were big Trek fans of the original series, and I think we'd discussed that at length for quite a while before actually coming up with the idea to do a podcast. And Craig, I know you had been a podcaster for a while before we actually started.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of, what sort of led to us doing this show together was I was having so much fun doing Camel Clutch Cinema.
Oh, yeah.
And that was kind of winding down, and you were looking to get your feet into the game. And it was just a matter of us finding out. I think it was, if my memory serves me, Jeff, it was two things. I think we decided that Star Trek might be a good approach since we both were interested or both had a love of Star Trek. But then it was also finding a unique approach, which I think led to us coming up with the commentary idea. Yeah,
yep. And I remember there was many lengthy IM conversations at work about, what the concept was going to be. And I remember distinctly I was questioning whether or not, there was room in the Trek podcasting arena for another show. And, you were convinced that the world is big enough to add another Trek show. And then we kind of just started to go with the idea of the commentary track. And it would be just the two of us sitting down and watching an episode of Star Trek together, looking for what we considered essential moments in the show or essential things in the show. And we set forth to create a list of the TOS episodes that you had to watch in order to learn as much as you could about the Star Trek universe. So that was the essential versus non-essential argument. So if an episode included stuff like character moments, backstory, introduction of alien races, new technologies, things like that, they became essential because you would learn things about the Star Trek universe and the ships and the planets and the aliens and the Federation and all that kind of stuff. And if an episode didn't offer anything new on the table, then it would become a non-essential episode. And I think we had a hell of a lot of fun doing that.
Oh, yeah. No, totally. I actually really looked forward to watching each episode in preparation for it. Because, I don't think there was ever a time where I sat down cold watching an episode and talking with you. So there was that element. Then there was the either, pre-watch or post-watch research you did about maybe some of the performers or guest stars in the episode. And then once the books came out, reading Mark Cushman's chapter on the episode out of These Are the Voyages, which, added a lot of reference material for us. So I think there's a lot of meat in those episodes. And I really, really, looked forward to those recordings. And, thinking back on what we did 80 of those.
Yes.
I can't really think of any that jump out as being, clunkers.
No, not at all. And side note on that, we were very ambitious to do it as a weekly show as well. I mean, I don't know if we had to go back in time and start all over again, I don't know if we would have picked doing it weekly, but it really kept us going and it kept us fresh and on point with the episodes. And I would agree with you that I can't remember any episodes in the run that I would have considered bad episodes. In fact, I have to, I'm not one to brag at all, but I have to pat us both on the back because I recently listened back to some of those older episodes, and I got to say, man, doing a commentary track for, 50 minutes straight, and you can edit those because we want them to line up with the episode. If someone wants to listen to it as an actual commentary track, it's got to line up. So we had to really be on those episodes, and God, we always seem to be able to find stuff to talk about. There's very little dead space in any of those. So
yeah, I remember early on, I was nervous that there'd be, that, I either hadn't prepared enough or, there wouldn't be anything to talk about. And, anytime you're podcasting, I think one of the biggest things I've learned over all the hours of podcasting I've done is that as soon as you introduce other people into the equation, a lot of those worries go away, because then you're interacting as opposed to just driving something yourself.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I had the same phobia about it. I'd always over prepare with tons and tons of notes. And many times I wouldn't get to actually use all my notes because we both had so much to talk about. There just wasn't enough time in the 50 minutes or whatever it was to get through everything.
Yeah. And going back to the whole, weekly, how ambitious it was, I think one of my recommendations when we decided to launch this, and it was my experience with Camel Clutch Cinema and some of the other podcasts that I had been involved with, was I believe we had like a 6-week backlog maybe before we actually launched that first episode.
Yeah, we had started recording, I believe, in early June, and we were planning to launch in August. And I think we had done, because the first 6 or 7 we did live in your condo.
Yes.
Together.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember. God, what a story! It was in the summer, so it was super freaking hot, and
no air conditioning. Yeah,
Craig's air conditioner was so loud we actually turned it off so that it wouldn't appear on the. And man, by the time we were done recording an episode, we were both sweating to death, and there were days where we did 2 or 3 at a time.
Yeah. And I remember we ran through that backlog fairly quickly.
We certainly did. And I think we quickly learned that we could effectively do them over Skype. And I think all the rest of them were done that way. And it wasn't really a detriment at all.
No.
We seemed to be able to sync up really well. And it seemed to work out. And, looking back on the catalog, I think we both have at one point said that we really hit a stride starting with What Are Little Girls Made Of?
Right.
The 7th episode. I think that was where we were starting to fire on all cylinders, and we had an incredible discussion on that one. But there was a couple of things that, looking back on the catalog, that I thought were kind of funny moments. One of the things I listened to recently was our Alternative Factor episode. And we always had a Trek news segment at the beginning of a lot of these shows. So it's kind of like a time capsule going back through. And that one, there was I believe there was an alternate idea for Star Trek 2009, and it was about Tiberius Chase was going to be the captain. And I if you go back and listen, man, I went off on a rant, and it was actually hysterical to listen to. I don't know if you remember that, but maybe go back and listen to it sometime. It's a riot.
Wow. What episode was that?
It's episode 27, The Alternative Factor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a funny one, and I don't think either one of us were that anxious to talk about that episode, but
yeah, that was a tough one. I think we definitely should have had somebody from 5 Year Mission with us, because a bunch of those guys are all fans of that episode, right?
Oh, they are. Yeah. That reminds me of doing our What Are Little Songs Made Of series. That was one of our first offshoots that we did way back, and I think in 2015 or so, man. And we, and during the time we were doing these episodes, we had some really incredible supplemental log episodes that we were doing to kind of break format. So, we kind of gave ourselves the flexibility to say, we want to do a show on a certain topic, like a deep dive on a certain episode. Yeah. So we had done one on Arena with Jeff Ferry. We did one on City on the Edge of Forever, which was really great. And we had a few, we did the Space Seed one as well. I'm just looking at Mirror. I think Ken Mills was on that.
Yeah, I was trying to remember which episode Ken did with us. Yeah,
there's a ton of stuff that we did during that time that I'm particularly proud of. I mean, even our first supplemental with April Abair and Vernon Wilmer about the Star Trek experience out in Las Vegas was spectacular.
Yeah,
such a fun conversation.
It was. Yeah, I think a lot of the supplemental stuff we did was really a lot of fun, and it was a cool way to bring some of our podcasting buddies and real life buddies into the fold. And I also think is it true that there's only one episode that's got 3 commentary voices?
Oh, you are absolutely correct on that, and you know which one it is, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
It is our coverage of The Cage, which we did
Yes.
as episode number 80, and it had Mr. George Pappy, director, filmmaker George Pappy. He was the creator of The Green Girl
Right.
documentary, which was the Susan Oliver documentary, which was a spectacular film. And we had the pleasure of actually seeing a screening of that out in Las Vegas. I think it was 2015? Or was it 2014?
I think it was 2014 because it was before I moved here.
Yeah, okay, so it was 2014, and we had such a great time talking to George when we did a bit about the Green Girl and getting to meet him. We thought, how appropriate would it be to have him be a guest on the commentary for our coverage of The Cage? And he graciously accepted. We had a great time doing that.
Yeah, yeah. And then wasn't there also a George Pappy connection to Operation Annihilate?
Yeah, he works at the facility where they filmed Operation Annihilate. So he was telling us all about the different locations that they used, and a lot of them are still there and look the same. So
yeah,
pretty amazing stuff.
That's wild. I really have fond memory of those episodes, and also I kind of liked the the healthy debate we used to have over whether something was essential or not essential, and then I tried to work in the party
the
discussion.
cocktail party, cocktail party rule.
Cocktail party rule, to try to sneak like shore leave in there and stuff. But yeah, I mean that was it was great, and it's really interesting, Jeff, to sort of see how like Star Trek sort of it started as a soul show, and then organically over the years sort of became this bigger thing, which is kind of what you've done with this network.
Yeah, it's this thing has really grown. I mean, we're coming up on our 5-year anniversary. So August 4th of 2018 will be officially 5 years that the Tricorder Transmissions has been on the air. And I look back on our origins covering TOS and our original supplementals very fondly. And, it's been great to see how much we've grown and how many new people we've brought into the Tricorder family over this time. And everyone is kind of starting their own journey in podcasting. And I think a lot of people are now up to their teens and early 20 episodes, and a couple of new shows that are only in their, single digit episodes of their runs. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing where all these guys and girls go with all of their shows. And it's amazing to see how this thing that we started almost 5 years ago has turned into a platform for so many people to get their thoughts and ideas about Star Trek out there into the world.
Yeah, right on. And I think you should be really proud of where you've gone with it, because I know we always sort of, I wouldn't say stressed is the right word, but we always kind of worried about where we could go once we ran out of material.
Mm-hmm.
And you definitely cracked that code. And then also, with stuff like Discovery, coming out, it definitely opened the doors for some new discussions. So it's really been exciting to see how how this network has grown.
Yeah, and an even more important question than that is hopefully we're going to see some more Mr. Craig Cohen returning to some of these Tricorder shows in the future.
Totally. And as we've sort of talked about on other podcasts that we do together, scheduling is such a hard thing. But, it's been very easy to sort of not be involved because there's so many great people involved and doing a lot of heavy lifting. So it's kind of been, fun for me to sort of sit back and just admire the work that you've done and the work that all these other fine folks have done. But I know we've sort of talked about, trying to find time to do a Trek Ranks or maybe picking special animated series episodes to dive into. So yeah, there's definitely opportunities there, man, and I'll never get tired of talking Trek.
All right. Well, you heard it here on episode 300, everybody. So we're gonna have to keep the pressure on Mr. Craig Cohen to return to the fold as soon as time allows. So the door is always wide open, and I'm looking forward to sitting back down with you and talking more Trek.
Right on. And again, I just want to give you a big hearty pat on the back for you kept things going while I was driving cross country on my
God.
When I uprooted my life and sort of restarted things, and you just kept running with it.
Yeah, and well, I thank you for those compliments, man. I really appreciate it. And I also got to give a nod to all the other hardworking folks here at the Tricorder Transmissions Network, and getting to episode 300 has been an effort by everybody here, and I know everybody takes the time. Being a podcaster for so long myself, I know how much work put into this, and this has just been amazing to see how many people have become passionate parts of the Tricorder Transmissions over the last couple of years, and every one of them is going to be on this episode, so I'm going to let them talk about themselves as well. So we're going to wrap this segment up, and we can turn the mic over to some of the other Tricorder hosts. Hey everybody, and welcome to the episode 300 celebration segment for Shore Leave and Disco Trek. And as always, I'm Jeff Hewlett, and I'm joined by my co-host on both of those shows, the always awesome Heather Barker.
It's me.
It's you. How are you, Heather?
I'm doing pretty well. I think we're in the double digits for STLV now.
Yeah,
so
I think we are.
90. It depends on what day you actually get in. I think I have my countdown is set for the day the convention starts. So mine is 98 days, 5 hours, 26 minutes, 53, 52, 51, 50.
That's pretty accurate. Pretty accurate. But how do you feel about hitting this 300 episode milestone? I mean, I think we were talking not long ago about how the first episode you appeared on the network was almost 3 years ago. Right after the convention this year, it'll be 3 years since your first appearance here.
And I didn't even remember that one, but you know what? I went back and listened to it today. It's. I think I'm very humbled by the fact that the network has exploded.
It really has.
Since that year and that first episode I came on, and it's been just amazing to see that growth, and listening to myself talk about the convention and our Trek family, and now our network is full of our Trek family. So humbling, rewarding, extremely special. I think that we've built something really remarkable here at the Tricorder Transmissions.
I would absolutely agree with you, and I was reflecting on this earlier when I was assembling some of the pieces for this episode that we're recording, and it's pretty incredible to think that everybody who's a host on this network at this point right now are people who met at STLV.
Mm-hmm.
Every single one. Yep.
And people that forged their own friendships. That's the great thing. It wasn't just people that knew us even. Yeah. It was they came together on their own, and they came up with these ideas, and I'm just happy that we're approachable enough that they came to us.
I know. I'm always humbled by that myself, that all of these wonderful people brought their ideas to us.
Yeah.
And wanted to be on our network. So I think that speaks volumes to what we've put together here. And, we got to talk about the two shows that we host together. And, of course, those are Shore Leave and Disco Trek. Shore Leave came out first, and that was the first show that you and I started together. And it's focused on the Star Trek convention going community. And we've got, at the time of this recording, about 40 episodes of that show out. We've been doing that for almost a little over 2 years now, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And I think, I remember after we did that original episode, which was a part of the 2015 STLV convention wrap-up, and you came on and talked about Cheerfleet and cosplay and all the stuff that you do, and the some of the events that were there and everything. And I think we were talking a little bit more after that, and I think it was near the end of the year where you pitched the idea to do a show dedicated to Star Trek Las Vegas, right?
Yeah, I think that after that first supplemental, after STLV, I think I got hooked on podcasting is what happened. And that idea just kind of sat with me for a while. And I think we were talking about what we were looking forward to for the following year, I think. Mm-hmm. Or it was a holiday special or something.
Oh, the Christmas special. Special.
That's what it was, Christmas special. And, we recorded our bit then, and I was like, what do you think about this? And, originally we were just going to talk about STLV, but then we realized, why just talk about STLV? Like, we have such a huge group of friends that go to conventions all across the world. Mm-hmm. So let's branch out. And so we've been doing a lot of that, and we'll continue to do that, and then focus on some convention specific topics like we have with cosplay and talking about harassment in fan spaces and at conventions and stuff like that. So social anxiety, that was another one. Some deep dive stuff.
Yep, STLV 101, parts 1, 2, and 3.
I was saving that for my special standout episodes.
Well, why don't we talk about some standout episodes? And so you were going to pick STLV 101, 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, because I just thought, we're experts, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, fair to say.
This will be my 10th consecutive year.
Wow.
Yeah, because that's counting 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 is 10. Wow. So I'm very grateful to get to go for this 10th consecutive year. And, we've talked about it over the course of the 40 episodes of Shore Leave, how experiences have changed. Life has changed in that 10 years for me, even now and recently. And it's just been amazing to have these experiences. So we thought, well, let's do a 101 and just teach people the ins and outs and get them prepared. And so not only was it a lot of fun to do with John Krikorian, our host over at Trek Profiles, mm-hmm. and then Jesse Akendo, who's our other moderator in the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas convention group on Facebook, and then our great friend and convention correspondent Marina Kravchuk. They all popped in and helped out. And I think that series is like one of our most downloaded series mm-hmm. of all time, right?
Yep. To this day, it is still one of the most downloaded series of shows we've had on Tricorder Transmissions by a good margin. I think only some of the most popular disco treks have come close to that number.
Yeah. Oh, really? Well, that's fun. Yay. I like that our shows are popular. But yeah, and I keep handing out that link. Even now with, about mm-hmm. 4 months to go, there's, mm-hmm. It's a plethora of knowledge.
It is.
So
it is.
I don't know how we're going to top it.
I don't know. I was wondering about doing like an addendum type episode, but I don't know what we haven't already covered. I mean, I think it's got 4+, 5+ hours of everything you wanted to know.
As like a supplemental to that series, we did the podcast over on Synthaholic.
Yes. Yep. STLV on a budget.
STLV on a budget. And so that kind of covers that aspect. So man, I just don't know.
Yeah.
I think, we always talk about getting feedback from people at the convention, and then we get to the convention and fail miserably at actually recording anything. But maybe the next thing is just a podcast full of feedback from members at the convention. I don't know.
Yeah.
But rest assured to our listeners, we'll still be doing our updates on STLV as it approaches. More and more news pops out. We talk about some of that news over on our new show, Weekly Trek. Mm-hmm. But when we do our next STLV episode, we can update on what's happened since then, since our last one.
Absolutely. And I guess, I think I've said this before on another show, but I can't remember what show it was on. It may have been one of the guest appearances we did together on another podcast, but I think one of the biggest standout moments for me was the Q&A we did with Danny Schwartz about growing up with her grandfather, Leonard Nimoy. That was such a touching conversation. Both of us being close with our grandparents and Danny being so close with Leonard Nimoy. I think we just had a great connection on that episode, and we talked about so many wonderful things and so many great memories for everybody. And, Danny sharing some very intimate stories about, especially near the end of Leonard's life. And it was really touching. And I one of the moments that I treasure from all of our podcasting.
Definitely very, very special and very intimate. And I hope that everyone has taken the time to listen to that episode and make sure to bring your tissues. Because I think we got a little bit of perspective into, the end of his life, basically, that no one else really has. And I don't think we were expecting that. And again, I was just extremely humbled that Danny shared that with us. She's very much a member of our family now, both her and Julie and David. And so we look forward to seeing them again sometime, whenever that may be.
Yes, I'm sure they'll be back at some point. So I guess, we should also talk a little bit about Disco Trek. And I think the genesis of this show is just a funny story to me, because leading up to the premiere of Discovery, we weren't planning on doing a Discovery show. We kind of talked about it a little bit here and there. And it was like, well, a lot of people are going to be doing them. That market's going to be pretty saturated. But when we were at STLV that year, a bunch of people asked us, either together or individually, if we were planning on doing a Discovery show on the Tricorder Transmissions. And enough people asked us, I guess, that we thought, maybe we should do this. And then you had the interesting idea to integrate our community into it.
We went back and forth because we were like, this could be exciting. But then we were like, man, we've got a lot of stuff on our plate. For those of our listeners who really aren't familiar with how the network works, I mean, Jeff and I are managing partners, and so we kind of run a lot of the show. And at the time, we had some shows, I think, in the works, or talking to people about them, or what. We had a lot going on. And Jeff especially is really the backbone of Tricorder, because he handles, uploading everything to the iTunes and all the different platforms there. So, admittedly, I was like, this might be too much. It may be too much for us right now. And so we'd kind of resigned ourselves to being like, hey, well, we might do a supplemental here and there. But then the closer that we got to Discovery, the more excited that we got. And then, I just thought, well, our network, and especially Shore Leave, is, a product of our STLV community and our Trek family. And there's really no outlet for those members to talk about Discovery, aside from, making comments in the group or whatnot, or talking amongst friends. So I was like, well, why don't we do a show where we have rotating guests? And so, everyone gets a chance to come on the show, and we just have people comment on the post, and then we use a random generator to pick them. And that wound up working out very, very well. I had some trepidation, because you never know who you're going to get.
Yep.
And there was a very likely chance that we could get someone who just hated Discovery, and that's okay. I'm never opposed to having, different perspectives and viewpoints, and showing that we can have a constructive conversation about our likes and dislikes and whatnot. But we were very lucky in that pretty much everyone that came on, really loved the show or highly enjoyed the show despite any issues that they had. And we were also lucky to continue to have a diverse group of people every week. I've talked on some of our other shows about how we at Tricorder really pride ourselves in being inclusive and diverse. And having guests on our shows that
Mhm.
represent that inclusiveness and diversity is something that we really strive for. So again, there's always a chance that it could be, 3 cis white dudes and Heather. But we got such a great variety of guests from week to week. And so many people came to us and said, "You're not going to stop the show after Discovery is over, right?"
Yeah.
And we were like, and so we didn't. We went to bi-monthly
Mhm.
instead of weekly, just to give us some breathing room. And we're doing our character deep dives. So we've done a couple now, and we'll continue to do those throughout the year, and we'll see what happens until we get more Discovery. But it's been a lot of fun, and I look forward to talking about those episodes every week that we did it. So
I guess it was ambitious also for us. Not only were we loaded with work, I think at the time, we were still doing a lot of shore leave, and I think we were doing animated series, and I was doing drawing Trek with Ian, and I was still doing the
helping
recording and
Jim.
editing with Jim for Trek Ranks. Yeah.
Yep.
So I was like, wow, this is going to be a big endeavor for me to take this on,
Yep.
personally, and more time for you to record, and you were doing a lot of the planning and the scheduling and the
Life drama on the side.
Yes, and but I have to give credit where credit is due. I mean, Jim really stepped up. He took over the recording and editing and producing for Trek Ranks, and Ian did some editing for Drawing Trek, and it really took a lot of load off and gave us the bandwidth to do Disco Trek, because this was the first show that we did that had such a stringent time frame around it. I mean, the show aired on Sundays. We would record on Monday, and I would edit and produce and release on Tuesday. Yeah. So super fast turnaround time. And we never missed a date, I don't think, except for the one time I think I was on vacation or something.
I think there were a couple weeks that were delayed. One was you were on vacation. I think one I was sick, and or life drama.
Yeah, but other than extenuating circumstances, we hit the mark every time pretty much.
Yeah, no, I think we just took about an unexpected month hiatus.
We did.
Again, my fault, guys. But the good news is my life drama is coming to a close, so that should no longer interfere with my work here at Tricorder. But everyone give a standing ovation to Jeff for all of his hard work in getting Disco Trek produced and out for you in such a short time.
It really was my pleasure. I enjoyed doing all of that. It was fun to discuss the episodes as they aired, and it was a great challenge, and I was really proud of the efforts that everybody put in, all of our guests, you, and it was such a fun experience to do something for live Trek that was airing on TV, and experiencing that with all the fans and getting to talk about it and have great discussions, and I was more than happy to do that. So think about some favorite moments from Disco Trek. What do you think, Heather?
So I was trying to go back through all the episode list, and I think that probably it wasn't specifically it was our supplemental is what I'm trying to get at. We did a supplemental talking about Star Trek versus social media is what I called it. Discussing the impact of social media on Star Trek fandom in the age of Discovery. And that was just something that I really wanted to do because we are living in a time where we're watching Star Trek live and we are able to interact with the actors and the creatives for the show on social media. And that in and of itself is such a huge privilege. Like when have we really, I guess back when DS9 and maybe was it TNG with the AOL chats with like Ronald D. Moore and all that. And maybe Rick Berman, I heard maybe was one on those. It was before my crazy Trekkie time. And I think that was pretty limited to just people who were in those spaces. It's not like Twitter today. And I think that the social media world is different. And so I've seen a lot of really great interactions with our cast and creatives, and I've seen a lot of really terrible interactions. And so I just had to sit down and say a few words, speak my mind about that. The harassment aimed at our Discovery cast and crew, and even beyond them, like even any of the actors that have ever been on Star Trek, or the creatives who have a political opinion, get called out, and there's just a way to interact with those people and a way not to. And the way not to is don't be a jerk. It's pretty simple. So I was happy with that episode. I apologize to you and Carl that Amy and I kind of took hold of that discussion.
That was a good one.
Yeah, aside from that, it's really hard to pick out any specific episode. We had some pretty serious conversations with some of the content in certain episodes. And I would like to think that those episodes and the conversations that we had were impactful for some people. I think we handled that stuff pretty well, but I guess those would really be my standouts. And then our patron discussion was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I was going to cheat actually and pick that 2-part wrap up that we did. The first part was done the way we did all of our episodes with the random guests from the group, but the second part was exclusively to our Patreon supporters. But there was something really cool for me about that, doing a retrospective of a season that literally just ended. So all of us that were on those 2 episodes had this immediate sense of perspective on everything we had just watched, and it's all sunk in, and this was our first reflection on everything. I mean, some of the episodes we'd done earlier, we had reflected on some things that had happened before leading up to that, but this was the time that we actually got to talk about Discovery Season 1 in its entirety, and kind of dive into some of the things that we loved, some of the things that we weren't too cool with, and some of the things we were wondering about how they were going to pan out for Season 2. And I think it was just a fun double episode, and it had such great discussions and great opinions and great fan theory. Definitely both were very fun to record.
Yeah, looking forward to more Patreon exclusive events. I know that we have one coming up. It's not announced yet because we're still figuring out details.
Yes.
But there will be one for June, and maybe we'll figure out something for May beforehand. I would like to do them monthly, but again, we're still working everything out across the network because we want our various hosts to participate. So it's just not always the Jeff and Heather show.
For sure.
So, yeah, I mean, you guys are probably bored of us already. So.
Oh. So I guess, that wraps up, I guess, this segment. So this is the Shore Leave and Disco Trek segment with Heather and I, and, reflecting on, 300 episodes and, 3 years almost of Shore Leave. And the funny thing, you look at it, we have 40 episodes of Shore Leave and 19 episodes of Disco Trek. So Disco Trek really built up pretty quickly. So
yeah.
Super proud of all the work that we've done together, and super proud of the network that we've built and all the wonderful, talented people that we have here now. This has been a fantastic run for both of these shows so far.
I assume that everyone else has talked about how they met, and we've talked about that in previous, many previous episodes. So I don't necessarily know that we need to do another dive into that whole story.
No, if you listen to Shore Leave or Disco Trek, you've heard it multiple times.
Probably heard it, but yeah, it just, I don't know. I'm not a big fate believer, but at the same time, everything fell together very well between Jeff and I. And listening to the first episode we did together, which Craig Cohen, who is a previous host of the network and may be returning sometime soon here and there. Well, regardless, he was supposed to be on that episode with us, and it wound up just being Jeff and Heather's show. Yes. And we talked a little bit, about having met in, what was that, 2015?
Yep.
And then you mentioned that we may have met the year before, but hadn't really had any time to spend together.
Yeah, I think we kind of brushed past each other that year, but there was really not much interaction.
That's how it happens a lot of times at
Yeah.
STLV. But just in the spirit of STLV, it's, to go from passing someone in a hallway or saying a quick hi or a wave to spending a little bit more time with them and not quite knowing what was going on. I think that I still laugh when I think about the fact that you thought I didn't like you.
Yeah, that was funny.
And then we go from that to, hey, why don't you come on the show and do this wrap up thing? And I go on and it's funny because I remember being really nervous and you remembered me being nervous. And then now, however, 3 years later, I listen to that show and I'm just like, oh, this was the beginning of the Heather and Jeff show.
Yep.
And we got along so well that I decided to, do this shore leave thing. And like I said, here we are. And I'm grateful to you for asking me to come on and entertaining my idea for shore leave.
It was a wonderful idea.
And teaching me the ropes of podcasting. And it's supporting me and working through my nerves and encouraging me to do intros on my own.
Yeah.
And out of that, we've built a great friendship and a great professional relationship. And because of the work that we've done together, I would like to think, not just here, but in the group, is a big part of what's attracted our friends to come join the network.
I would agree with that.
So as of right now, we've got, the original mission for the Tricorder Transmissions, including our supplementals. We've got Disco Trek, Drawing Trek, Polytrex, Reading Trek, Shore Leave, Trek Profiles, Trek Ranks, Weekly Trek, our newest show. Maybe other shows in the horizon.
Well, I'll drop a little. Well, I don't know if this made it into the Trek Ranks edit for episode 26, but in case anybody is a fan of our older What Are Little Songs Made Of series, it's going to be coming back at some point.
Oh, yes, I know, because I already pinged Andy and told him to make it happen.
Yes, we talked about it. So keep an eye out for the return of What Are Little Songs Made Of, the 5-year mission behind the music series that we had. That was a lot of fun. A short-lived little thing. We did the whole first year one album, kind of behind-the-scenes tracks with the band. And we're going to fire that up and get through the rest of their catalog, including their newest record that's just coming out now.
Yep,
Year 4.
You wrapped that first season right before STLV 2015. But yeah, we here at the Tricorder Transmissions are especially excited to have debuted a song from Year 4. So we are the debut network. Sorry, I'm very excited and special.
Yes, we are.
I'm very excited and I feel special. So thank you to everyone over at 5-Year Mission for allowing us that privilege. We're all supporters here, and I think every shore leave we do that we talk about STLV, we're like, bring them back. And yes. I hope that we get to someday, because we miss them. They were a staple and they are missed sorely. So super excited to have them return to wrap that up. We've got three albums to go through, so that's going to take some work, but we'll get there. In the meantime, if you've got an idea for a podcast, feel free to approach us. We have some specifications that we'll tell you about, but we are always accepting ideas for new shows, and especially other women hosts. If you are a woman with a Star Trek podcast, please come join us, because I am tired of being lonely. Which shout out to a Tavacron, which only has about 4 episodes, but they are worth listening to, with Jeff and my dear friend Claire Little. So you can find those on the website too. Super awesome. But yeah, it's amazing to have watched our network explode with enthusiasm. We have such a wonderful family of passionate Star Trek lovers that do all of the work so that we don't really have to, which is just wonderful. They come with ideas, they come prepared, they are professional, they do an amazing job with all of their shows. And every day on Twitter, someone says Trek Ranks is their favorite show, Trek Profiles is their favorite show, Politics is their favorite show. And I am just incredibly proud of everyone here at the network for what they've done. They've helped us make a name, and I can't wait to see what happens in the next 3 years that I'm with the network.
Yes, this is going to be exciting, and we've come so far so fast, and who knows what's on the horizon for the rest of these years. And I'm sure we'll be back talking about episode 600 before we know it.
Before we know it, I guarantee time flies.
It very much does. So, Heather, happy 300 episodes.
Happy 300.
All right. And we're going to be moving on to yet another segment here in a second. So stay tuned. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the episode 300 segment for Drawing Trek. I'm Jeff Hewlett. And with me is my co-host for this show, Ian Adams. How are you, Ian?
Doing great. It's good to hear you.
Yeah, it's been a while since we recorded anything, so nice to be back in the recording seat with you.
Yeah. Sorry about that. It's been a little bit busy for me. I spent a couple months down in San Francisco trying to get onto a ship, and I'm on one right now, calling you from sunny Jacksonville, Florida, where we're loading up on cargo, and then we're gonna head out to the West Pacific.
Wow, man. You're going to be out there for about 6 months, right?
Yeah, 6 months. I'll be getting back in September. I'm a little bummed because that means that I'll be missing STLV this year, but
yeah, it sucks.
It's worth it for the job.
Yeah. It's the job you've been looking for. And, on these segments, we're going to be talking a little bit about the history of our shows together. And I think it would be nice to reflect on how you and I met. And at perfect segue, you mentioned Star Trek Las Vegas convention, and that's exactly where we met. And I believe, if my fuzzy memory serves, it was the 2015 convention?
I believe that's true, because I want to say, yeah, definitely, because I've been to 3 of them so far. So let's see, I was at 2017, I was at 2016, and then my first was 2015. Yep.
And I think we met at the Masquerade Bar, where it seems a lot of people meet.
Where everyone meets.
Mm-hmm. I think it was the year after that. I think it was 2016 when you officially joined the Tricorder family as a co-host of Drawing Trek with me, right?
Yeah. I remember you approached me at your anniversary party that you were having up in Andy's room.
Yeah.
And asked me if I wanted to host stuff for the Gold Key comics, which you had started doing. Mm-hmm. And if memory serves, it was because he found out that I was like really into comics and even like working on a comic.
Yep. Exactly.
And so you were like, comics.
And you had you had a damn good radio voice.
Oh, well, that's I got nothing for that. It's just I was born with it.
You are. It's a God-given gift. But you're right. We had started talking about the Gold Key comics as a part of the original Mission series that was a continuation of our TOS coverage. We did all 80 episodes of TOS, and then we started doing some Gold Key comics and some animated series with my old co-host Craig Cohen. And, when we spun that comic series off into its own feed called Drawing Trek.
Yeah, which is pretty cool if you ask me. I think the way that we kicked it off was pretty exciting, getting to talk to Doug Drexler.
Yes, that was a really awesome interview. And, we went into that interview right with the premise that we were going to talk to him primarily about comics and Gold Key, and the interview just went all over the place.
Yeah, even I still distinctly remember his just laugh, just that unexpected laugh as soon as we brought up Chud.
Oh God, yeah, that was hysterical. He threw his head back, and laughed.
Yeah. That was good times. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. And if anybody out there who's listening to this and hasn't listened to that interview, man, we covered some great material with Doug, and some old times in New York City, and other movies that he worked on, his work on Trek series, and just pretty much his whole history of his career.
Yeah, and longtime listeners will know that one of my big areas of interest is in like the beginnings of the Star Trek fan culture, right? From the late 60s through the 70s, during that dark period where there was no Star Trek except for what was on, reruns on syndication. And,
sure.
But there was tons of stuff going on, like, for example, the Gold Key comics, and there were novels coming out. And so Doug, who was, just knee deep in all of that stuff, running, oh God, the name of it is suddenly escaping me. What was the name of the store that he ran across the street from Gold Key?
Oh, you're asking someone with a worse memory than yours.
Oh man, Doug, if you're listening, I'm sorry I forgot. Yeah, I mean, it was this really, it was the Federation Trading Post.
Right.
It.
Yep.
Yeah, so the Federation Trading Post was this huge thing. They had the one in New York, and they had the one in, I want to say it was Berkeley on the West Coast. And yeah, so it was cool. He worked at that store, and I mean, so he had been involved with the early fandom since there was an early fandom. And so just getting to talk with someone who has been with Star Trek since then, all the way until now. I mean, he's still doing stuff for Star Trek. It was a real treat.
Yeah, absolutely was. That was one of the big highlights of the Drawing Trek series, along with something I think we both agree on is our best episode so far, and that was the episode that dealt with the issue of Gold Key called The Mummies of Haitius 7.
Yeah, issue 20, I think it was.
Yeah, I think it was issue 20.
And I would say maybe it wasn't our best episode, like in terms of just, discussion that we had, but it was definitely like the best story that we've read so far in the Gold Key comics. And I'm really glad that we kicked off with that one, because if it had been like a stinker, boy, I don't know if I'd have been able to, keep up the motivation.
Yeah, we started off at a very, very high point, and we've been comparing just about every issue we read somehow to
almost every one.
That issue. We're like, I hope this is as good as the Mummies, but no, doesn't turn out that way. But, one of the things that I love about talking about these comic books is that, it's widely known, and we've even admitted many times that they're not the greatest comics in the world, but we always seem to find so many things to talk about, and we talk about it in a positive way. We don't trash these comics. We find the bits and nuggets of Trek that are in there and bring them to the surface and give them their due in a way that I don't think gets done.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely do have our fair share of nitpicking.
Oh, sure.
Of stuff like, why does the transporter room not look like the transporter room or whatever, but there's definitely a focus, like whenever the art gets good, whenever the writing gets good, we are always very quick to pounce on that, which is a lot of fun, because it's kind of like panning for gold, right?
Yes, exactly.
You're just sifting through all of this stuff. But then when you do find that little gold nugget, like, boy, that thing is shiny.
Yes. Yeah, great way to put it. I completely agree with that assessment of those comic books. And there's been a lot of really great little moments, or even really, oddball moments that have led to some fantastic extended conversations.
Oh, yeah.
I love looking for, things that really felt like original series moments in these comics, and they're becoming more and more common, whereas in the earlier ones it was like completely removed from the original series. And it's starting to get where we're looking at these issues and going, yeah, I could see this one being a TOS episode.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, we've had a couple ones where both of us rated them essential because we felt like, hey, this could have been an episode of TOS.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Not just the Mummies of Asia 7, but
no. Although that would have been a pretty cool episode of TOS, I must say.
Oh yeah, I love that one.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to you getting back from your tour and us firing up the series again. I think we have one more episode that's left to come out while Ian's away, and then once he comes back, we'll be firing Drawing Trek right back up and picking up where we left off.
Yeah, I do want to apologize to all of our listeners for what is going to be a bit of a few month drought, but it's kind of I can't really help it. We don't have internet on the ship, and I'm going to be gone till September. What can you do?
Yeah, really, and even when you do have internet in the ports, it might not be the most reliable thing in the world.
Yeah, no, and it's costly, and you know how it is when you're traveling internationally.
Oh, of course, I've been there, and the data caps are usually pretty harsh, and Wi-Fi is spotty and insecure. So I think everyone out there who's a Gold Key and a Drawing Trek fan will wait for us to come back, and they'll be happy when we do.
Yeah, and rest assured, when we come back, I mean, we're going to be hitting the ground running on this. We plan to cover a lot of ground, because I don't know about you, but I really still want to get to issue 47.
Yes.
So that we can get Doug back on, because he worked on that issue.
Yes, and we're still in the 30s at this point, so we got a little ways to go, but we'll get there.
Yeah, but we're definitely gonna power through these, but we're not gonna rush them.
No, of course not.
You're still gonna get the same quality conversation and discussion, and at times maybe overly lengthy, because we do talk a lot.
Yes, we do. We've had some long episodes. I think we busted 2 hours once or twice.
Yeah, which is fine by me, though, because I mean that's like 2 hours a pop of talking about Star Trek. Yes. Who doesn't love that?
I don't know anybody who doesn't love that. So I love it too. These comics are a blast to talk about, and I'm glad that we're doing these together. It's been a great run so far, Ian. I'm looking forward to getting back in the saddle again.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait.
Hey Jeff, happy 300th episode. Bobby Clark here, the Gorn.
You are listening to the Trek Ranks Podcast, a member of the Tricorder Transmissions Podcast Network. Actually, no, you're not. You're actually listening to episode 300 of the Tricorder Transmissions, and this is Jim Morehouse, I'm the eternally grateful host and creator of the Trek Ranks Podcast, as well as the TrekRanks.com website, which has been a labor of love of mine for probably about 5 years now or so. So I just wanted to give a little background on the Trek Ranks Podcast and TrekRanks.com, which is where it all started for me a few years ago. And when I created Trek Ranks, I just wanted to have a place to list all of my ranks, since I'd always kind of enjoyed connecting with fans on Twitter and talking Trek. And since I'm the kind of person who's always spouting off my top 5 this or top 5 that, and the kind of guy that's always asking other people what their favorite of this or that is, I just figured that would be a fun thing to work on in my spare time. So, and one of the other drivers for me was that whenever I would say, hey, this is my favorite episode, it's definitely top 5, everyone would always call me out and say, you say that about every episode, and they were right. So I just wanted to catalog all of it a little bit from my perspective, and I've had fun doing it. But I am a Luddite. I don't really know anything about it, so I figured out how to build my own website, worked really hard on it across a couple of weeks during a holiday break a few years ago, and I know it's not the flashiest website ever. It doesn't have a lot of fancy bells and whistles, but I gotta say I'm pretty proud of it. I think it's a nice, clean, and easy to navigate site, and a fun little resource of episodes and thoughts for fans to check in on. And hey, it's fully searchable. I like that fact. Each list you can search your results and by season or name or ranks. So I like that aspect, and then I use it as a resource myself. So of course, once I created that, I also knew it would be a great place for me to post my 20,000 word diary and I'll use diary for lack of a better word, breaking down my experience on the Star Trek Enterprise sets when I was an extra back in 2004. And I've said this before, but one of the smartest things I ever did after that experience was literally the day after my 2 days on set. I just started writing, and I didn't stop. I wrote everything I could think of, just wrote it all down, everything that happened when I was on set. And I eventually crafted it into a document that would help me remember as much as I could from that experience in as much detail as I could. So I just wouldn't forget anything. And I realized Trek Ranks would be a great place for me to post that with some of my pictures and share it with my friends and other Star Trek fans that I've met online. So if you're ever interested in what that experience might be like to be an extra on Star Trek and sit on the bridge and fire the phasers and shake forward when they yell shake and have sparks explode over your head, I got to do all those things, and I definitely have a great read for you. So check out trekranks.com if you're so inclined. All of that really was the impetus for the website. And from there came the podcast. And I can say that I'd been thinking about doing the podcast for a while. But remember when I said I'm a Luddite? I am a Luddite. I have no idea how to edit or do a podcast or do any of that stuff. So I didn't really know where to begin. I didn't really want to ask anybody to rely on them. So I'd done some research on it, but wasn't really going to pursue it. And then a good friend of mine, Jeff Hewlett, the founder of the Tricorder Transmissions podcast network, he reached out to me with the very same idea and asked me if I wanted to try and do it. And that was awesome. So I'd met Jeff a few years before in Vegas. We had met on Twitter and met up at the annual Las Vegas convention and hit it off. Great guy, great friend. And he really showed me the ropes on how to get this thing launched. And now I'm kind of off and running and doing it myself. He still does all the back end stuff and gets it out there to you guys. But I do all the front end and planning and organizing and editing and getting it up and out there. So what is Trek Ranks? Well, I think if you've heard it, you know it's just a place for me and my guests to talk about all the reasons we love Star Trek. There's no negative picks. There's no nitpicking, no negative topics, just a bunch of people talking about why they love Trek. And as I say every week on the show, we love it all, from TOS to TNG, straight through to Enterprise and the Kelvin timeline, and now Discovery. We love it all on the Trek Ranks podcast. So up to this point, we've done 27 episodes in the past year. And as of this 300th episode, by the way, Trek Ranks is exactly 1 year old as you're listening to this. So our topics range from everything from like standard no-brainer ideas like top 5 Klingon episodes or top 5 two-parters to some super niche topics. Those are my favorites, like our awesome top 5 scenes in a turbolift and top 5 scenes in a shuttlecraft. I love those really specific topics. And we have a lot of fun ones to come. Our top 5 scenes in a Jeffries tube. How about top 5 Trek divas? That one's coming up. How about top 5 Neelix episodes? Yep, we're doing that one too because the Trek Ranks podcast loves Neelix. We love it all. We got a long list of topics and no end in sight. So just wanted to give you guys that update on what we've been doing for the past year. Really excited about it. And I just want to close by saying thank you. And, if you've ever given Trek Ranks a listen at any point in the last year, thank you. And if you've listened and supported the Tricorder Transmissions Network and all my friends here at the network, thank you. And if you love Trek for any reason at all, thank you. Because that's all that really matters to me when it comes down to it. So as always, just want to close by saying I'm looking forward to standing with you again here in this place where I belong.
Hi, listener. I am Shashank Avaru, co-host of Polytreks. I'm very excited to be doing this special recording for the 300th episode number hit for the Tricorder Network. I'm so glad to be a small part of this huge, vast network. And with me to share the excitement is my co-host on Polytreks, Barry DeFord.
Well, thank you very much, sir. It's really great to be here and to be a part of the Tricorder Transmissions at their 300th episode. I would say we popped up somewhere in the late 280s or so, maybe the 270s, and we've done about 9 or 10 episodes at this point, and it has been a learning experience. And I love learning. I love the idea that I'm a school teacher up here in Canada. You might notice my jaunty accent and the amount of times I say sorry, but back after the 2017 STLV, when I had met Shashank just briefly at the iBar in the Rio, I was vacuuming my house and I was thinking to myself, I was listening to an episode of Shore Leave. I get most of my podcasting listening done when I'm on the doing laundry or doing vacuuming or mowing the lawn or shoveling my copious amounts of walks that I have to do in the winter. And I thought, would it be cool to do like a political episode of one of these tricorder shows, come on and talk about the politics of Star Trek? And then I was like, politics of Star Trek, politics, Politrex, that's it. And I felt really, really good about that. So I contacted Shashank, I think somewhere in, what was it, September?
Yeah, I think it was around September when we just started talking about. I originally contacted you because at that point I was considering moving to Canada, and so that's how our conversation got started.
Right.
And then you told me, "Hey, I have this idea about a podcast, but I don't know what it really is about." And then I gave it a minute of thought, and I myself have always wanted to be on a podcast, but I didn't want to do one until it really seemed new and original and fun to me. And when you gave me your idea, it sounded like all those three things. And then I said, hey, it should be where politics meets Star Society. And then I gave you, when you said those words, what I associated it in my mind with, which is the real world fusing with with the politics of Star Trek and the mythology of Star Trek coming true in our world, and how different episodes, themes, and characters have different meanings across society, culture, and politics, because everything is politics. The argument can be made that all mythology, all religion, all written rhetoric is politics. So I connected that in my head, and then you said, yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking about. And so I think that was how our show was born.
Absolutely. The idea here is, politics really isn't the end all be all. Shashank and I have already done some episodes that deal maybe a little more with religion, philosophy, culture, sociology, but calling the show Ralphi Culso Politrex just didn't have the same ring to it, so we decided Politrex would be the better way. And I was thinking like Politrek or Politrex, and I figured doing the S at the end pluralizes it and shows that there's a number of different ways we can go. So the episode format that we've decided on, and it is a little on the loose side because, things change and whatnot. Sometimes when we get guests and they've got really great conversations with us, we will sort of change things and change distances, but we like to welcome you all to the show, and then we do like to talk about the contemporary news cycle. So the things that are happening around the world and how they can connect to, non-contemporary Star Trek episodes or even episodes of Discovery. So always spoiler alerts when we're there. But both Shashank and I, neither of us are American. We're not American citizens, that is. I'm a Canadian, and Shashank is of Indian heritage. And so with that, we hope we can also provide you folks with a bit of an international, maybe we're the exotic end of the Tricorder Transmissions network. What would you say about that, sir?
I like how you're indulging our crazy, mad ramblings as exotic discussion. I like to think that you bring all the smart discussions and I'm just there to riff off it and hopefully say something that makes sense enough for it to go on air. I really think the show itself is the looseness of it is very intentional, and because of that we have gotten a lot of diverse topics that we wouldn't have usually talked about had we stuck to a crazy format. In the first 10 episodes itself, if you go up now, you'll see we've talked about things that we're intensely passionate about, be it spies in one episode, or just talking about the Traveler in one episode, talking about veganism in another, and then just doing an interview with Manu Sadia. We have run the gamut on all topics that we can choose from. And that is also because fundamentally we argue that everything in the real world can be political and can be social. And when we compare and contrast that to Star Trek, there is an interesting discussion that needs to be had. And I think we are doing that with our podcast.
That's really the end all be all of it. So we do have some more great ideas coming along in the near future that we're super excited about, and we hope you folks will be interested in joining us and joining in the discussion as well. Of course, Shashank and I do let our political affiliations show in the show, and we always try to incite debate, and part of it's part of our political journey as well. Of course, Star Trek in itself is a journey. The same favorite episodes that I had in the past aren't necessarily the same that I have now, just as the political journey that I'm on right now, the social, religious, cultural journeys that I find myself on change over time too. And to be part of that discussion, I think, is really important. So if you find that you just see the deeper meanings of Star Trek and hope that there's something more to be spoken about, you can even send us episode ideas. We'd love to have input as well and hear from anyone who is listening to us, because though I think Shashank and I have built a fantastic friendship, if you really want to make a close friend, podcast with them. If you really want to get to know a person, podcast with them. And I really couldn't think of a better person to podcast with. Shashank, you're a fantastic co-host, and getting to know you in this and getting to know how you kind of tick politically and in all of the other sorts of ways, and the amount you've taught me about the world. Of course, I would have never learned about, say, like Swami Vivekananda or the deeper sort of meanings of different points of Indian culture. I mean, I would have never heard of Chicken 65, right? So it's important.
I'm glad I can bring you all the important things from our culture, namely Swami Vivekananda and Chicken 65. If you just know both of those, you should be set in India. That's all you really need to know. You're very kind for saying those words. I don't think I'm such a good host, and I honestly think you elevate the podcast with your intelligence and your creativity and your level-headedness. I really think I ramble off into the deep end and then you pull me back. So I'm very thankful to be doing this with someone who actually knows what they're doing. So thank you for that, Barry.
Oh, well, it is a pleasure, and it's a fantastic journey. So coming up in the next few episodes that we have for you folks will be a debate with the illustrious Mr. Jim Morehouse from the Trek Ranks podcast. And of course, we do have a cool announcement coming as well. We have Miss Amy Nelson coming to talk about teaching in Star Trek. Entertainingly, Shashank, myself, and Miss Nelson are all in the education industry in our respective countries and states. So that is a really cool thing, and we're going to be talking about that quite soon. And then, of course, Shashank and I run through several different series right now. We have DS9 25, where we're celebrating all things Deep Space Nine and its 25th anniversary, looking at a number of different things. And, of course, we're also moving through the Politics of series, and that is where we look at the politics of the different movies, and some Star Trek episodes might pop up as well, maybe even some characters and the like. So this is a exciting time for us because we have tons of content, and I think that's the best part about the Star Trek podcasting community is really there is something for everyone. And the quality of Star Trek podcasting, I have to say, among all of these folks who are putting in their heart and souls, I couldn't think of a better community to be a part of, and I'm so proud that I'm a part of the Tricorder Transmissions and that I have friends in other podcasting networks, because it is all killer, no filler out there.
And on a personal note, just to add to everything you're saying, the Tricorder Transmissions series of shows, I really think covers everything you can think of when it comes to podcasts. We have listicle shows. We have shows that are just deep dive of a fan and not the show. We have a show that deals with real world and Star Trek. We have a show that is exclusively Discovery. We have a show that is exclusively Star Trek literature. And now we just started a new show called Weekly Trek, in which we just spend 30 minutes, two co-hosts from across the network, spend 30 minutes just talking about little updates and major news that we receive about the show. So I really think we're covering everything that is possibly available. And the Tricorder Network, if you don't listen to anything else and you are a first-time attendee going to STLV contemplating about whether you want to go or not, these guys have thought so far ahead last year they dropped about a 4 to 6 hour series in which they cover everything you need to know about STLV, right from when you land to when you leave. So the fact that we get to be a part of such a wide-ranging network, a network that allows us such freedom in spite of our political opinions and differences, it is insane. It is crazy. It is unbelievable. I often pinch myself just when I realize I'm part of such a huge network, and I'm very, very excited to hit 3,000 with you, Barry, and hopefully 30,000 too.
Oh yeah, no, the being at the 300 mark is pretty awesome, and you know what, Shashank is right. There's so much here, and if it wasn't for the Tricorder Transmissions Network, I would have never made it to I would have never made it to STLV. I would have never met Shashank. I would have never come up with the idea, and this podcast would have never actually happened. So we've got sort of a very nice internal thing happening. So we hope that you've enjoyed our description of Politrex, and we very much hope that you check out our back catalog, listen to our shows as they release bi-weekly usually. So once every 2 weeks you'll hear from Shashank and myself. And of course, in that, if you have episode ideas, anything to contribute, definitely drop us a line, talk to us on Twitter. Of course, at Politrex. We're about on Facebook.
Same thing, POLITREKS.
What? We've made it that simple? Are you kidding?
It's really easy to find, perhaps too easy.
Yeah, we might have to put shields up on that one. But of course, we hope you do check out our show, our back catalog, anything that's coming in the near future. We're hoping if you have any great ideas, feel free to let us know. You can come onto those different social media infrastructural platforms. You can call in, all of those wonderful things to get in touch with both Shashank and myself. So with that, we hope you enjoyed our little blurb on our show and that you live long and prosper.
And onward to Star Society.
Put down that remote.
And pick up that paperback. My name is Marty Ali.
And I'm William Conlon, and we are Reading Trek Podcast. So, Marty, why don't you tell everyone how we met?
So we met at Star Trek Las Vegas in 2017. We met the night before the actual convention started at iBar. We were all just a bunch of people hanging out, and introductions. I ended up meeting, Will was one of the first people I met. And we were there with some other friends, weren't we, Will?
Yeah, our good friends Tyler Habiger, Madison Spencer, my friend Cheryl Weaver, who I already knew from a previous Star Trek convention. I thought it was just amazing because we all were just, random people kind of converging. We had kind of digitally met on the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas Facebook group that Heather and Jeff run, but we all just converged, and Larry Nemechek was having his Star Trek party, and we all put together a little team, and we actually won the trivia contest.
Yeah, that was really fun. It was fun to kind of divide the prize up as well. It was a good way to figure out like what each of us were into, so that was a lot of fun as well.
But I thought it was so great because I've always gone to Star Trek conventions alone, and I think we all just clicked right away from the start, and we ended up spending pretty much the whole convention together, which was really just wonderful.
We did. Now we're all best friends. We have a group message, all that stuff, so we keep in contact all the time. And now you and I are doing a podcast together.
Yeah, so why don't you talk about how your idea for the podcast developed, and then I'll tell you my side of it.
So, I had always had the idea of doing like a sci-fi book club podcast because I'm really into science fiction and I wanted to read more, and I figured a podcast would be a great way to get me to read regularly. It didn't start out for me as a Star Trek specific podcast, but because I had no podcasting experience, it was, it was something that was going to be a bit more of a challenge, but then I was just casually chatting about it with Will, and he loved the idea and wanted to do a Star Trek version of the podcast. So we presented the idea to Heather and Jeff, and they loved it as well. And they made the whole process super easy for us to get rolling. So we did, and now we're 6, 7, 8, I don't know, episodes deep. So it's been amazing.
It's been such a great process because I never had a thought of starting a regular podcast. But I got into the Tricorder Transmissions network listening to them. They're just so interesting. I loved following along with Disco Trek as each episode dropped, and I love Jim Morehouse and Trek Ranks, and listening along with that, going, well, what's my top 5 list? And then you got Polytreks and Drawing Trek and all these really great resources. No matter what aspect of Trek you wanted to listen to, there was something there for you. But then I realized, hey, I've got a shelf full of Star Trek novels, and there's nobody talking about them. The first idea for me was after you and I had both appeared on Disco Trek as weekly guests. I suggested to Heather that they should do a Disco Trek about the book Desperate Hours, which was the tie-in novel for Discovery, and they were considering that, and I think like an hour after I said it to them, I started messaging you, and we formulated this plan, and we pitched it to them, and I think it was a matter of 24 hours between the idea and getting the go-ahead to start developing it. And we had, I think, less than a month, we had our first episode published. So it really was the smoothest possible process.
It was. I had already had like a template for the show that I wanted to do drawn up, so it was really easy for me. I had based a template off our show on not exactly the same format, but a similar format to what Mission Log does, where they summarize, they joke around a little bit, and then they get into some serious discussion. And I thought, wouldn't that be fun to do that, but for the novels? So that's kind of what Reading Trek is. Do you want to give listeners a better description of our show?
Absolutely. So we are a book club podcast working our way through the Star Trek Expanded Universe, one novel or comic book at a time, discussing the characters, plots, writing, and piecing it all into the larger Trek universe as we pull out the meanings and messages of the text. Although we do encourage you to read along with us, the show was designed to give all Star Trek fans a way to journey through the expanded universe together, even if you haven't read the books. Whether you're reading along with us, revisiting an old favorite, or if you just want to know more about the extended universe, this is a podcast for all Star Trek fans.
So one of our big standout episodes, although we haven't had a ton of episodes yet, we're really proud of Episode 4, Conquering Hate, featuring Drastic Measures with Dayton Ward. Not only did we have a great discussion with our guest Heather Barker, but this episode also features our first author interview with Dayton Ward himself.
Yeah, and Dayton is just such a big name in the Trek novel universe. He's written like 30 Star Trek novels, and he's just such a great guy to talk to about Star Trek because he's, not only passionate about it, but he's got a vast knowledge of the universe, and he's responsible for some of the really, really great Trek novels of the last 15 to 17 years.
Yeah, he's a great staple. We're hoping to do a lot more author interviews in the future. So, Will, since we have a few minutes left, and we are celebrating the 300th episode of the Tricorder Transmissions, would you like to share a little bit of background information, behind the scenes, as it were, of how each episode comes together?
Absolutely. Well, each episode of Reading Trek starts with us selecting a novel, and then we, wait for it, read the novel.
What?
Yeah, novel idea, huh? See what I did there?
Ha!
But yeah, we enjoy either discussing it just between the two of us or having a guest come in. It's been wonderful having Heather Barker come in because, again, she is our what was our name for Heather, Marty? Our discovery.
She's our discovery guru.
Discovery guru. I love that. But we're looking forward to having numerous guests in the future. Upcoming episodes, we have Tyler joining us. Madison's going to join us in the future. Heather will be back, of course. Dayton's going to be back for more conversations. But we're hoping to bring in people that we may not even know. If somebody wants to seek us out on Twitter and talk to us at Reading Trek. If you're following the same novel that we're covering at that time, or it's one of your old favorites, we would love to have you come on the show and share your thoughts about it.
Absolutely. And of course, we can't leave without mentioning the Tricorder Transmissions Network and their 300th episode. So excited to be a part of this podcast network, and we hope for 300 more episodes, and we hope to be a big part of the network in the future.
Yeah, considering the amount of shows that are on there now, I think we're going to get to the next 300 even faster than this. And
we're a network that's growing fast. There's no stopping us.
Yes, indeed. And I can't wait to see everybody back at STLV, and we're going to have a big party there. So really happy 300th show, Tricorder Transmissions. You guys have really put together something special. Jeff and Heather, you guys deserve all the credit in the world for this, because you've put together an amazing, vibrant fan base community for Star Trek fans.
Truly is one of a kind. Happy 300, Tricorder.
Happy 300th episode. I think you're wonderful.
Hello, all of you wonderful people. This is John, the host of the Trek Profiles podcast. What a treat it is to be a part of the 300th episode celebration of the Tricorder Transmissions Network. Mine is the newest show on the network, so I've just been a very small part of that 300 hours, but I'm thrilled to have contributed in any way. Jeff and Heather and all of the other contributors have worked so hard and for so long to build up this little network into what it is today. And on behalf of myself and my little show, I wanted to thank them and all the other amazing hosts for all the tremendously entertaining, insightful, and useful podcasts that they've created. I've been a Trek fan since as early as I can remember. I grew up watching the original series every night on WPIX Channel 11 in New York City on this old black and white hand-me-down TV that we had. It was the actual highlight of my day. Now, as an only child, I didn't have any siblings to talk Trek with, and my mom and dad really weren't into it, so I would have to talk about it each day with my friends at school. By the time I was in high school, I had discovered that there were these Star Trek conventions, and being in New York City, I had them right there in my backyard. Now, if I recall correctly, the very first one I attended was actually a creation convention at the Penta Hotel in the 80s. Now, this hotel is actually very special in Star Trek fandom, since it was actually the site of the very first convention back in the 70s when it was called the Statler Hilton. So I've been around Star Trek and Star Trek fans for a big part of my life. However, just like when I was a kid, there aren't a lot, in fact, any people around me that are into Trek nearly as much as me. So talking Trek with other fans online and listening to podcasts about it, that's been the main way I've lived Trek fandom for quite a long time. Now, in 2017, Jeff and Heather had asked me to be on their Shore Leave podcast to talk about the Star Trek Las Vegas convention, and I enjoyed the experience quite a bit. I doubt she would remember, but Heather actually suggested to me that I should do a podcast when we were chatting before recording the show. Jeff agreed, and I didn't say much of anything at the time. I was flattered that she would say that, but the idea didn't grab me. What could I even say about Star Trek that hadn't been said already, was just what was on my mind. There were so many, and there are so many excellent Star Trek podcasts that were doing Trek news. There were several that were doing episode analysis. There were rewatch podcasts, and there were so many of each, and there were so many of quality that honestly I just didn't feel like there was anything that I could offer that was unique or interesting or that anyone would have any desire to listen to whatsoever. So I put the idea to rest. And then earlier this year, I was reflecting on Star Trek fandom more broadly, and I realized that while Star Trek was just a show, it was the people that made the fandom so wonderful. And that's where the idea of the Trek Profiles podcast came from. Each episode, I'd sit down with a Star Trek fan, and I do a profile on them and how they express their fandom. The question I'm trying to answer is, why does this show matter so much to them? Why are fans wearing uniforms? Why are people getting Trek art tattooed onto their bodies? Why does this tribe gather at these conventions to hear actors tell the same stories they've been telling for many years? That, really in a nutshell, is what my show is about. My co-host is the M5 Multitronic unit, which provides administrative and technical support, of course, but he really doesn't say too much. Each podcast episode I break roughly into thirds. For the first part, we explore the fans' expression for their love of Trek. How long have they been watching? What's their first Star Trek memory? How did they get into it? Do they collect things? Autographs, photos, uniforms, ships, models? For what purpose? How do they feel connected to Star Trek through those things? What's the meaning of it all? In the second part, we take a look at some episodes that are meaningful to the guest. Why is this episode meaningful? Does the story speak to them in some way? What lessons do they take from it? Which characters do they identify with and why? And in the third part, we try to figure out how Star Trek has affected their life. Do they or did they ever make life decisions based on Star Trek? Does it define some key relationship in their life? Why does it matter to them, and how have they shown that it matters, if at all? And that's really the main three parts, but at the end we like to end with a little bit of fun, so I call it the Kobayashi Maru. I ask each guest 5 or so Trek-related questions in a lightning round. They don't get the questions in advance, and usually the choices aren't so clear-cut. We run through all 5 questions in about 30 seconds, and then the M5 analyzes the results. Should my guest pass the Kobayashi Maru, they get awarded an honorary Star Trek title from the M5. So just for laughs, here are some of the questions from past podcasts. Coffee with Janeway or tea with Picard? You've won an all-expense-paid vacation to one of these 2 planets. Which do you pick, Ferenginar or Nimbus 3? Time for breakfast. Will it be egg white burritos with fire-roasted salsa or a green shake with extra green? Now, some of those may not seem like Star Trek references, but I assure you, they all are. It's a lot of fun, and I think the guests enjoy it, plus it satisfies the M5 to torture guests, apparently. And after each episode, I tend to tweet out the questions so listeners can weigh in and have a few laughs too. Now, the powers at Tricorder Transmissions Command asked if we'd like to share some highlights from our episodes, but as I record this, I've only released 2 episodes, with a third currently in post-production, so it's a little bit early for a best-of clip reel. But let me at least tell you about some of the episodes that I did release instead. The first one that went out was with Barry DeFord, who also hosts the excellent Polytrex podcast, along with Shashank Avaru on this very network. We had a great and wide-ranging discussion on his Trek story and how it affected his life. He tells the story of how Trek connected him to his grandfather and some of the powerful ideas in the show that grabbed him, and his plans for something called Couch Trek, which is a return to the Trek of our childhoods. The next one I released was with the delightful Haley Stoddard, whom I've known for a bit. She's a frequent guest on some other podcasts, and she had an interesting story to tell about how she shares Star Trek with her daughter and how it's influenced her life and her career too. But the one thing that I have learned is that Star Trek just isn't on the screen. It's in the world, because the fans make it so. Pardon me for saying that, but I thought you would all appreciate the line. But that's really what my show is about. It's about how fans live their Star Trek experience and trying to figure out why this whole thing matters and have a few laughs along the way. So if you haven't, feel free to check it out wherever fine podcasts are sold. You can follow me on Twitter or Facebook at Trek Profiles, or email me at feedback@trekprofiles.com. In closing, let me just say how much I appreciate the Tricorder Transmissions Network. I appreciate Heather and Jeff and all the other amazing hosts on the network who've made this 300 hours possible with their hard work and diligence, and I really just want to thank them so much. And here's to 300 more. Cheers. Live long and prosper.
And that brings our 300th episode celebration to a close. Thank you all for listening to the Tricorder Transmissions and helping us celebrate this big milestone. We're so happy that you're all with us, and we'll see you again on another episode.